All right, Saturday, June 27th, 2020. So I'm going to attempt to walk through the way we break down and teach specifically the mandritto fendente. If after seeing this people have interest, I'll break down the other blows as well. But this is where things kind of start. I want to start with some really basic stuff. Initially, I think I'm actually going to put down the sword and just talk about how we stand and where. Conveniently, I have these lovely square foot checkered tiles in my backyard, which makes this really easy. And the way I look at this is I'm going to start out standing with my feet square under my shoulders, like we always tell people. And I look down at my left toe. I'm going to put my left heel where my toe was. Put my left heel where my toe was. As I do this, I go ahead and sink and settle. My left shin should be straight up and down. I'm going to use left and right here because that's what it works for me and it's easier. Really what we want is forehand side and backhand side, or forehand and offhand. From there, the other thing I'm going to do is try and show everything from the front and from the side. So that was my front view, right? And here I am sideways, and again come out, and I'm set. This is base stance. This is what I would use for playing an abbracciare. Now, the sword. Lots of different groups within HEMA talk about holding the sword a lot of different ways. The way we do things is pretty straightforward. If you look at how the Statue of Liberty holds the torch and you bend your hand and there's a crease. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to set the crease, set the grip into the crease of my hand, and I start with my thumb not on the side, but not fully wrapped around, kind of tucked in here. You will notice my hand is back from the cross. This is necessary to protect my hands. From here, I make a ring with these fingers on the grip, slide down to the pommel, and close. From the side, right, it looks like this. Form my grip, pinch down, not here, sort of here. This sets and closes on the pommel. All right, now, I'll leave my gloves off for this part because it's probably easier to see. I take my good stance, I go ahead and set this on my shoulder. I do this with sharps, my hands are relaxed, everything's here. Now, a useful thing at this point is to do these basic steps to prevent overuse of the forearms and the hands and over tightening, is I'll literally hold this with like 2 fingers with each. I don't need a lot of force here. I need to cradle the sword in my palm with my dominant hand, and I need my offhand on the pommel. And I'm going to begin simply by, without doing anything else, pulling down on the pommel, and watch what happens to the sword. Right? From the side. This hand is even open for this, right? Ready? And you can see it start to come forward. From here, what I'll do is I'll punch behind it. So I've got the pull, then it becomes pull punch. Pull punch. Pull punch. Pull punch. And as I do this, from farther back, you can start to see my rear heel come up as this happens. It's not big, but it's subtle. Now at this point, I'm driving this a lot with my lats on the pull and my arms still. Although I can still do this with 2 fingers each. Becomes, and now I step. I let that, as that pulls that heel off the ground, I let my arms come forward. So I'm here, right? And I come and facing to the camera, right? I'm here. Loose grip. I'm not putting any strength into the sword, really, right? But I'm here. Now we have the arc of the blade figured out, right? I'm here, and that blade arcs, right? It rotates around my hands and snaps forward. In longsword, this is my defense. I have to get this moving in front of my body. But I also don't want to sit like this, right? How many people have we seen in tournaments that hold a stance like this or like this, where this hand and arm are at risk? I see this a lot from folks who do German, who fight tourney. You'll see guards that look like this, where they want to snap forward in that cut really fast. It's interesting, but it has risks involved in it. Conversely, if I take away the targets if I start here, and I'm in this, and then I wind with my body, the closest target to reach is either this shoulder or that knee. Neither is a great target. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to drive this blow. The sword moves first, but my hip and legs drive it forward. So that as I'm here, it becomes, right? And from the side, my sequencing becomes, right? So I've come from here to lower this here. And if we look at the plates in Fiore, you'll see when he shows Posta di Donna, he shows several variants of it, but one variant we see has the point angled forward across his shoulders. So as I drive forward, this whole thing becomes this. As this comes through, I have my same pull punch, right? And I'm going to take that and drive it from this back hip. The challenge with this is as you do that, as you drive, your blade wants to come out to the side. It wants to come flatter. It's a temptation, and it's something you can control in a bout. How much power goes this way versus to the side. But in general, we want to keep that tight, right? So what I want is something more akin to that. And it's very easy to end up with that. If you see where my blade comes. Now, what does this do? The less I take the small muscles of my arms and hands out of the equation, and the more I recruit the big muscles of my core and my legs, the more power I will generate with the blow with less effort. The cost of it, to some extent, is the movement of the feet. This is a little harder to sever from the movement of the feet. But again, I can play this without it, right? If I come here and start, let's say I was in a right leg lead, and all I have to do right here is just twist up a little bit, and then it's the core twist that drives. Right? I'm here, or I can couple this to my core, right? And if I make a blow at something approximating, I don't know, 80%-ish power, you'll see a blow that ends up looking like, right? And importantly, I can generate that power and leave my point out. A full blow, right? Everything we've done so far is the mezzovolta of the sword, the half blow. I go from here, a half turn, I don't finish the full. The arc of a full blow is pretty straightforward, right? I do the exact same things, drive forward to here, and at full extension, I then complete. Where do we want the power in the arc of our sword? Where do we want the blade in the arc of our sword? There's a lot of people who teach cutting in HEMA by setting you up, dominant leg lead, get you here, and they want you to do this. They want you to come up and just let your lats and the big muscles of your back pull that down and across, right? Cool. Except, as far as we can tell, none of the European sources say to do this. This actually comes from Japanese cutting mechanic with a very different sword. The other downside to this is if you look at this cut, what comes into measure first, right? If I'm starting here, or starting here, and I do this, I'm driving with my core in that twist, but my hands, now the sword. In this method, what comes into measure first? At the point my sword comes forward, I'm vertical, slightly angled forward, right? What comes in first? The sword blade. My hands are not leading the wrist, right? There's no real moment. As soon as my hands pass the plane of my body, that sword blade is coming forward. There is no moment where you can target the hands and ignore the sword, right? Coming through, pulling with my arms and core, if I just pull like this, my hands lead. We'll see this echoed in other blows, right? We can make these rising cuts, or we can make this, right? I can come across here, where are my hands? Lead, 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 right? Versus if I come here, my sword leads, right? Fiore tells us to make the mezzano, the reverso mezzano, with the false edge. So there's a principle of keeping the hands safer and hidden, and there's a power generation principle, and they are syncretic here. Again, just once more, I'll do the build-up, this time against the pellet. So I'll start here, and I will pull, right? Just pull. I will pull punch, pull punch. I will pull punch step. And then I will recruit the core. We do essentially the same things on the reverso. The mandritto mezzano is very similar, although again, there we have more of a risk. It's hard to get the blade out ahead of the hands, but it's such a powerful strike that there's some overcoming to that. In any case, hopefully this is useful and helps answer some questions. Thanks for listening through my ramblings.